Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, could Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders be bowl eligible without playing a game outside of Lubbock, Texas? That and more next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you're getting $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more hits. So visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, my man. And today, well, a breath of football in the air. We're going to take a bit of a hoops break as we dive further into digesting the Texas Tech football schedule released this week. Back to hoops on tomorrow's episode as we wrap up the week and get ready for the Red Raiders to return to United Supermarkets Arena here in the LBK. But I've had a little time now to chew further on what we got from the league office, and obviously some new things to digest in general, Chris, whenever it comes to the cast of characters that will represent the opposition in 2024 as you enter the new Big 12 era. Let's put it back on the screen here for those watching on YouTube. We'll run it down one more time for those listening via podcast. You know the non-conference schedule: Abilene Christian coming to town, Washington State on the road, North Texas coming to town. And that is the first of three consecutive here in the LBK as you open up Big 12 play with Arizona State and Cincinnati here in West Texas. Arizona on the road after that to open up the month of October. Baylor comes to Lubbock, and then it's two straight away from home as it's Texas Christian and Iowa State. Then Colorado is in town November 9th before you wrap up the season at Oklahoma State and then back here for West Virginia on Thanksgiving weekend. And want to get it started, Chris, before we get into toughest stretch, biggest swing opportunities, biggest game of the year, home or away. Want to get it started with something that's been noticeable to the audience. Several comments on YouTube regarding this. You probably noticed this as well. But within Big 12 play, you got a handful of teams with extra time to prepare before they face Texas Tech, that being the Baylor Bears, Colorado Buffaloes, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State. Now, Tech's got some open weekends in there as well, a couple of them, which we will get to. But that definitely one of the oddities standing out, that some of your opposition is going to have some extra time to prepare for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders.
Yeah, Cowan, I think there's, looking at a schedule is like talking about a recruiting class. Every coach likes it, right? I love my guys. We just signed them. I mean, they wanted to be here, and it's like, of course, you love the schedule. As you pick it apart and kind of purse through it, yeah, you're going to find some things like, oh man, that's not good, or that's not necessarily beneficial to me. But you can twist yourself up in all these different things, and I mean, look, ultimately you could spend a bye week. I think they're important. They're necessary. I like the fact that everybody in the league this year is going to get two of them, but. How many teams do you see come out of a bye week and are just really rusty? Like they've lost any kind of momentum. They're just like their timing's off. I mean, and then it takes them a bit to – and you see some teams come out of a bye week very refreshed and like hitting on all cylinders. A bye week can allow for, some players to get back if they were dinged up or injured or whatever. I mean, but, you just can't – it's just one of those things where if you start fretting about stuff like that, it's like, okay, you got bigger problems, in my opinion. But
that's right.
It's not like anybody was out to get you or say, hey man, let's give a bunch of bye weeks to Tech's opposition so we can screw the Red Raiders. I just don't buy into that. You'll see how it plays out in real time. Like maybe some of these teams do get some guys back that wouldn't have played otherwise. Maybe or maybe they're rusty and not necessarily in good shape with their timing and everything. Who the heck knows? Because these seasons are marathons. And like we're going to sit here and talk about all these starting quarterbacks all off season and what kind of matchup this is going to be. That and then when you get to the actual game, you may be dealing with a second or third stringer, right? I mean,
Right.
that's just kind of how the thing goes. So I'm not going to necessarily worry too much about some teams having a bye week before they play the Red Raiders.
Yeah, I always am curious to see how you're feeling as a fan whenever you hit your bye week. Are you wishing you could get right back at it and kind of keep a
Yeah.
hot streak rolling? Are you going to be thankful for the break? It was kind of just like we talked about with Texas Tech basketball not too long ago, where as a fan, I'm like, 5 days without a game? The hell am I going to watch this week? Mad about you reruns? I wish they were playing, but then you kind of consider the gauntlet that Texas Tech had been running through, and I think they were fairly grateful for the 5-day stretch where they didn't have a game, and then you get a top 25 road win after that. So maybe it did help to pay off in Norman, Oklahoma. But what did you make from the Tech perspective? A couple of open weeks, which we liked, and it wasn't the goofy non-open week. Hey, final week of the season, we're going to give you an open date. Okay, so we get an earlier week of the offseason. I mean, we've had that before, which is kind of just funny to laugh at, but that's not going to be the case here this year.
Yeah, so because the first things is when we briefly touched on this yesterday, the first thing that I notice is that, 4 of your first 5 are at home and 5 of your first 7 are at home. Now, the flip side of that is you've obviously got 3 of your last 5 on the road, and 3, so there's a trade-off there. If you're loaded at home to start it out, you're going to be kind of sprinkled in a lot more road games toward the tail end. But I like these. I never was a fan of the bye week, if you could help it. I never was a fan of the bye week, like when you play your non-conference games, then at the one of those last weekends in September. And then before you get conference season going, I just felt like that was too early. It's the dual bye week thing here is really messing with my head. But I got to tell you, and what's happened is because the calendar is the way it is, and everybody's going to start out that basically August, that last weekend in August. Okay, it's kind of stretched everything out. There's also an extra week in November. The way just the calendar stretches. So it's like there's more weeks of the season. So it allowed for an extra bye week, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is more of the norm here, as they really look at the calendar and kind of figure it out and kind of, with the expansion of the college football playoff and all that stuff. Anyways, but the bye week on like November the 16th is a bit tricky. I mean, and I look at it selfishly, in that I'll look at it and be like, I can't wait to be at home watching football on that particular weekend, or maybe the Red Raiders are playing basketball somewhere by then. That's what, because I don't get those.
I should have added a graphic, Chris, there with you in a Barcalounger. This is Chris's bye week between Colorado.
Because you don't get to just sit home and consume as much college football as you want when you're in the middle of it. And, we're watching a lot of it on the plane. I'll rewatch some stuff, whatever. But yeah, that's kind of one of the first things I was like, this is multiple Saturdays where I can kind of sit back and enjoy it like everybody else does.
I'd have to go back and reconsider the dream schedule that we threw out. I talked about on yesterday's show, one thing about this one I wasn't all that fond of was catching Oklahoma State so late in the season. Whenever you are a well-coached team, which Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy traditionally is, you get better as the season goes on. You don't get worse. You definitely don't stay the same. No one stays the same. You likely get better, though, if you are a well-coached team. And so catching Oklahoma State a little bit later in the year, not necessarily ideal. As I said yesterday, I'd rather have them early on when they're kind of in the mode of maybe losing to South Alabama, not making a run to the conference championship game like we saw last year. But I think I'd have to go back and look. I think I did try to squeeze in an open date for Tech prior to that trip to Stillwater. So, and I would guess, Chris, by the time you're in November, you're going to be banged up. You're going to have some dinged up guys here or there. So aside from just the opponent, which I'm glad maybe to have a little extra time to prepare for, probably that point in the year, mid-November, you may be thankful to have some extra time as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And it's funny because I was so focused on the the Ames weather, by the way, it's the normal temps on November the 2nd or November in general is like a high of 58, low of 34 is the norm in Ames. Looked it up. So I'm going to hope for more closer to 58 than I am to 34.
Yeah, still brisk.
Yeah, that's right. But it still could, that cold is different than other people's cold because of the moisture in the air. It's like Ames is just sitting there in a river bottom. Anyway, I digress. Oklahoma State, that could offer up some interesting elements as well. If you've watched any November football in Stillwater, and I was at a game this past weekend or this past season in Stillwater when they played Cincinnati. It's raining sideways. It's just a mess. And then, I think their BYU game, this year was a mess with just a lot of precip and cold and all those things. So Oklahoma can be just as tricky as Kansas and Iowa right there up through the Midwest. So we'll have to keep an eye on that because my guess would be you won't necessarily get just perfect weather that day. But you're right. I mean, how healthy at that point is Ollie Gordon or is Alan Bowman still, because what's crazy is, the last Texas Tech quarterback that went into Stillwater and got a win, it was the guy that's playing for Oklahoma State that particular day. And that would be his last home game, I guess, from a league standpoint in college as well. So
we think
we think unless there's unless they're rewriting the
who knows
NCAA Constitution on eligibility rules or something.
Right. There could be something going down like that if anybody's paying attention to what's happening in the state of Tennessee right now. Maybe a conversation for another episode.
You'll let us have whatever we want.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they're a prickly bunch out in Tennessee. Made a great hand to the state of Texas once upon a time. So best of luck with that, NCAA. Okay, let's pivot here to a more singular kind of question, Chris. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and happy Super Bowl week to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And FanDuel has more ways than you can count for you to end this season with a dub, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4, not 5, not 6. Not only can you bet on who's going to win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which player will score the first touchdown, how many points are going to be scored, and so much more. National anthem action? That do anything for you? Check it out at FanDuel.com. New customers also joining today, and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. All you got to do, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You can either make this into toughest game of the year that maybe leads to a toughest stretch, or in general, if you see a collection of dates or opposition here. But the toughest stretch of the season, I wanted to get into you and into this with you. Yeah, something. I just want to get an apartment with you. All right, spend more time together is what I'm trying to say. Obviously, this is tough to do as we're sitting here opening up the month of February. Preseason rankings, preseason perception. Some of this will rise, some of this will fall. Somebody might be good. We don't have any ideas going to be good. Hello, West Virginia, at least to a degree last season. So this is going to be kind of out on a plank trying to figure out a tough stretch or a tough opponent here. But who's at the top of your list as we sit here still several months away as far as that goes?
And when we're talking like toughest game?
Yeah.
You could talk yourself into several of these, but for these reasons, I'm going to give you that it's that first conference road game at Arizona on October the 5th, and here's why. One, they are expected to be, one of the I think the contenders for the league championship. This is a team that went 10-3 in last year. They have their quarterback back in Noah Fafita. Yes, they do have a new head coach in Brent Brennan, and there's been some change there. But this is going to be, one of the teams or programs that are talked about as far as winning the league in this first year of an expanded 16-team Big 12. And the other reason I say that it's big is because I think this is what stands in your way of like a really hot start. I think it's going to be, to me, not that Arizona State or Cincinnati or Arizona State or North Texas or Abilene Christian, any of those are going to be like easy per se. But I think the Arizona game is the one that allows you to get off to like a 6-0 start, or whether you kind of and whether you can be taken seriously as a league title contender, or whether you're like, okay, they stumbled, they failed their first real test. Because I think a lot of people look at this game as one of the better games and matchups on paper, as we look at it way before the season, as being one of the key early matchups kind of to determine, the conference championship and things like that. There'll be a lot of eyes on that particular one, and Noah Fafita and Baron Morton going at it. And it obviously didn't go well for you last time in Tucson. And Alan Bowman, we just talked about him, who's now quarterbacking Oklahoma State. He got hurt. He got hurt early in that game. Kevin Sumlin was the head coach at for the Arizona Wildcats, and we got home at 4 a.m. It was not a lot of fun that trip. But yeah, you'll be back, and I think that's a big one to me.
Yeah, that was one of those strange games where I thought, holy cow, are we about to win a game 13-7? We play some defense now? For whatever it was worth, Arizona might have stunk. I don't even remember. But then, Alan Bowman couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat as far as some of the passes down the stretch. And Tech came up a little bit short. All right, I'm not trying to be a contrarian here, but I have two different offers for either toughest stretch or toughest game of the year. Until I see otherwise, on the road, week 2. Are you ready to go, boys? I may point out Washington State as my first toughest game of the year. I understand they had a collection, last year of 6 consecutive losses and lost, I think, 7 of their final 8, if I'm counting that correctly, a season ago. I don't expect them to be a good team. I don't think Pullman, Washington necessarily is high on the list of the toughest places to play in America. It is going to be a long road trip. But early in the year, we have not necessarily seen the best version of Texas Tech so far under Joey McGuire. It's been great to see them seemingly getting better as the season goes along. But how about, week 2 this time? Show some improvement. So I don't know, man. I may be making too much of it, but I do have some recent trauma as it relates to some early weeks and some early season road trips that have got me paying special attention to that one. But toughest stretch to me, Chris, I really think I may look ahead to the end of October, early November, at Texas Christian and then at Iowa State. And it also has something to do with the opponent that is looming on November 9th. I don't know what the Colorado Buffaloes are going to be as a team, but I do know as a circus or entertaining sideshow, they're going to be a 10 out of 10. There's no doubt about that. So I don't know about any looking ahead or something like that could play into that, but back-to-back road trips, one of those being in Lubbock East, as I know there'll be plenty of red and black there at Texas Christian Stadium on October 26th. But then you go to Iowa State. So I'm looking at that stretch there as you come back to face Colorado on November 9th is maybe the one I'm looking at as the most formidable, as the Red Raiders are still trying to establish some momentum away from the Jones under Joey McGuire. What do you make of that? October 26th through November 9th at Texas Christian, at Iowa State, back here to take on the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you about the Washington State part, just because it's a road trip and it's a long ways off. I mean, I think you probably have PTSD from the Wyoming game last year. And
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you don't want to go stumble. Then I think, you'll probably hand it to Taj Brooks early and often in that game just to kind of get yourself settled in. But, yeah, I would have told you that, to me, and you could include Colorado in it, but that toughest stretch right there to me is like those back-to-back road trips to Fort Worth and Ames. Neither place is easy to play at. They're both supposed to be pretty good. Iowa State, I think there'll be some expectations there. TCU had a down year, and they've loaded up in the portal. And all that, and so, I just think back-to-back trips on the road right there is a bit tricky and tenuous. I could make the argument too that, I mentioned Arizona's like toughest game, but you could have easily made the argument like the in Stillwater is your toughest one, too.
True.
Which is just, but people are going to sleep on this. this West Virginia game, at the tail end. We've documented that's going to be Thanksgiving Saturday. Okay. Thanksgiving is on the 28th. This game is on the 30th. We've talked about you're going to host the Aggies in basketball that Friday, the 29th. Okay. That night. Tech is really going to try to do a good job of selling that weekend as an event and come be a part of this and that. And we'll give you plenty to do and all those things. But I think what people have maybe gotten lost on is I've seen it written, I've seen it said, like a boring opponent in West Virginia or a blah, like they're just kind of like West Virginia won 9 games last year. They bring their quarterback back, and they probably are preseason top 25, folks. So, I mean, and who knows what anybody will be at that point of the year, okay? Because you'll know well before that if they're any good, if they're healthy, if all those things, right?
Yeah.
But just like with Oklahoma State and on it goes. I mean, because we're sitting here looking at Colorado going, man, what a circus that could be. And, oh, man, this would be so much fun. Well, they were terrible last year. They were awful.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the months of September, I mean, they just couldn't win. They were injured. They just didn't play good football. I mean, Deion will still, tweak it, and he's adding players and all that stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to toss that up about other candidate for toughest game at Oklahoma State because it did just play for the Big 12 championship. And then obviously West Virginia, with all that they bring back and they just won 9 games and won their bowl game and all that stuff.
I don't know how anybody could be blah about West Virginia. Like, do you have some type of condition in your brain where when it's not a Longhorn or an OU on the helmet, you're blah about everybody? Maybe you fit that category. I've never been that. I've never been blah about Kansas State. I know that's the example that pops in my mind. Like, I know some people are like, Kansas State, how boring. You get bored by them smacking you in the mouth over and over and over. Like, you beat those guys, that means something to me. And while West Virginia has not been like in a Kansas State category, they've been tough as nails more often than not. I mean, real football program. So I don't know why anybody would be blah about West Virginia, particularly when you've got a soul on the line. It's the battle for John Denver's soul, the Duchendorf Cup, to wrap up the regular season. Blah does not fit into that description to me. Okay, Chris, let's wrap it up here with a superlative. Game of the year. Now, there's so many different kinds of criteria you could throw at this one, so give us your choice in the YouTube comments for what you think would fit into this category. Maybe there's somebody on the opposing sideline, if it's Deion Sanders or otherwise. Does Sonny Dykes really get you going? Dave Aranda? Whatever it might be, however you see fit to name something the game of the year, the one that is really going to get your attention. Is it a proving ground for Texas Tech in some specific kind of way that maybe we haven't seen in a previous couple of seasons? And Chris, I think I'm going to have to go back to where we've been a couple of times before. It's going to have to be in the Dust Bowl there in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm looking at some remaining Big 12 flavor. I think first, to me, whenever I'm thinking about the game of the year, and obviously from a entertainment or ticket holding standpoint, it's not in Lubbock, so it's not going to fit that kind of criteria. You didn't get Oklahoma State a season ago. I feel like Oklahoma State has as much right as anyone in this new Big 12 era to say, hey, this is our league, because they have had as much consistency as anyone going back for a decade plus. That is the one I would really like to see Texas Tech have a chance to get. Of course, by that time, you will have already played 10 games. So the odds on you getting that one I may feel differently about on November 22nd as opposed to right now. But that is the one I really have circled. I think that'd be a big one for Joey McGuire in the program if they can go get that one. Which one is standing out to you for whatever reason if we're talking game of the year?
Well, and you know what's you mentioned Mike Gundy. I think you've mentioned Prime Time or Prime Coach Prime. Sorry, with Colorado, and like that's as big of a lure sometimes as the head coach. I mean, do you think the general Tech fan knows who the head coach is on September the 21st across the field from you?
You give me 100 guesses, I'd need 200. I have no idea.
Kenny Dillingham.
Oh yeah, Kenny's out there. How could I
like
forget?
the next week you play Cincinnati. Okay, you got any guesses there?
That's a Satterfield, right?
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go, Scott Satterfield.
All right,
Yes.
all right.
And then we've talked about the brand new head coach at Arizona. It's not Jed Fish anymore. He went off to Washington, but Brent Brennan, who came from San Jose State and all that stuff. But anyway, that's because I think you're touching on what's a big lure as far as game of the year or what you focus on is kind of who coaches the opposition.
Yeah, it's like credibility. If you were to
Yes.
win, I guess is what I'm thinking there. Yeah,
Exactly. And I think with Dave Aranda, their issues this year. He's probably on a 1 year situation, a must win year. Sonny Dykes went from the national title game to not being in a bowl game in back-to-back years. Yeah. Matt Campbell is I think had a few hiccups, but he's been superb in Ames, Iowa for the most part. And then there's Dion, who's just kind of getting started. But yeah, I mean, if you're asking game of the year. And who knows what everybody will be, but I mean, Mike Gundy is kind of the standard in this league now. You don't play Utah. I think Kyle Whittingham or obviously Kansas State with Chris Kleiman or whatever. There's some of these teams that you're going to miss and don't play. But I just would say that game in Stillwater, just because all the dude does is win 9 or 10 games. It's like, what is it now? 18 years in a row where he's won 7 or more. And I think it's 11 or 12 of those 18 seasons. He's won 9 or 10 plus, which is wild, and has played for the league championship multiple times. And again, he's not going to – you can't knock him for not beating Oklahoma at all because he's done that, I think, in 2 of the last 3 years. But now they're not going to get to play anymore. And then, obviously he doesn't want to win enough league championships, okay? But – I guess is the criticism, but anybody would take that level of consistency. But so for that very reason, and they have a first-team All-American running back in Ollie Gordon. They are the one program or one of the very few in the country that can go, our running back's better than Texas Tech's. And I would listen to that. I mean, he had like 11 more touchdowns than Taj Brooks did last year and ran for about 200 more yards and all that stuff. And so Ollie Gordon is a beast, and they bring all their 5 offensive linemen back. So, yeah, that's the one I would point to because of Mike Gundy and the reasons I've just mentioned.
Yeah, some recently exercised demons have me going away from Baylor. If you hadn't got a win there against them last year, that'd probably still be pretty high on my list because of the way they embarrassed you last time they came to Lubbock. Again, West Virginia, I ain't sleeping on either. That was a painful game to take in. And I mean, not sleeping on from a motivation standpoint. I'd love to thump West Virginia after the way they did you every which way but right last time around in Morgantown, including sending your starting quarterback out of the game. Chris, before we're out of here really quickly, I guess as we sit here, 7 home games, and it kind of sounds like Texas Tech is trying to make this a thing, trying to make this kind of a priority moving forward. I know there can be a lot of talk about, grand ideas and things we would like to do. Maybe it doesn't then come to fruition, but you think maybe this is something we can become accustomed to?
Well, if you think about it, 7 home games is a lot. And I think they've got a lot of money dumped into some facilities now, or more than they have. And I think they want to showcase those and play as many games in that building as possible to get the benefit of said facility and the investment into such things. But like from a football standpoint, think about it. If you've been really good at home, yeah, you've lost a few home games with Joey as the head coach. But like, for example, if you lose just one home game this next year, you're already bowl eligible without even leaving your building. That's not the standard. Don't make no mistakes. Not what I'm trying to say, but I mean, many years it's been. But Joey wants to make it clear, like, hey man, just getting to a bowl game is not what we're about. Like we want to push further. But I mean, you do the math, and you win. It's like basketball right now. You win all or most of your home games. You set yourself up for postseason success, and that's what would be the goal here. And plus to that, they want to play their games in front of their fans, in front of these enhanced facilities and all those things. But I think it will become the norm a bit. That's certainly the goal that they're working towards, unless something crazy in college athletics changes.
Nah,
You know,
I
and
doubt
then
it.
you need to alter it. I mean, we haven't seen any of that.
I think we're set in stone now for the foreseeable future. I
Lock
doubt
it. Sharpie. Put it in Sharpie.
Well, look, college sports is all, particularly football, all about finagling every conceivable advantage. Everybody's finagling left and right, top to bottom. It's all finagling. So let's get to finagling here in West Texas. And certainly from an entertainment standpoint, would love to see more home games than not. All right, Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. We're back at it talking hoops and setting the table for Saturday tomorrow. See you then.
We can get ready for I guess it's kind of like the Kansas. I wonder if Mahomes and Kelsey have a bet on this game on Saturday. You know, we'll break down the Red Raiders and the Bearcats. A couple of guys in the news. Don't know if you've heard, but playing in a big game for some team up in KC. But yeah, one went to Tech, one went to Cincy. They're locking it up Saturday in Lubbock on the hardwood. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Keep hope alive, everybody.
And make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.